May 5, 1943. North Atlantic, 52 degrees, 30 degrees to Abreu. Wind knifes the night to rags. North Atlantic combers slam the conning tower of U-53 as Oberleutnant zur See Karl Brenner braces himself in the spray, one mittened hand on the bridge combing, the other pressing binoculars into the sockets of his cold-burned face. The boat rides high between waves, then lurches into a green wall that sends sleet and salt hissing across the night. "Funkraum?" he calls down. The radio man's head pops up at the lower hatch, wool cap pasted to his brow with sweat. "B-Dienst intercept. Convoy gross, westwards. Position bestätigt." A big westbound convoy. Meat in the old days. But tonight the ether is crowded. Coastal stations chatter. Escorts spit short, clipped English into the dark. Brenner feels the thump of the Atlantic through his boots and tastes something new in the air. Danger with a plan. "Acht, Kommandant," his the Saku, WO says, pointing off the port bow. "Masten, niedrig." Low masts, he has learned to fear those. The new destroyer escorts ride low and tight, their silhouettes wrong for the old British corvettes. They carry tricks. He orders slow, silent screws and turns to parallel the convoy's route, keeping just within the skin of a darkness. U-553's bridge watch shivers under gray oilskins. Below, in the control room, men hover over GHG hydrophones, feeding in the knocks and thumps of the night. The mid-watch smells of diesel, sweat, and the Swedish tang of battery acid. The navigator's pencil scritches. The engineer murmurs to his men, nursing the diesel's tempo with a pianist's ear. "Gerät einschalten." The mate thumbs the METOX set, the Biscay cross that's supposed to warn of Allied radar. The receiver hums, then quiets. Nothing. That should be good news. It isn't. Too many boats have been surprised lately by aircraft whose radar the METOX cannot hear, centimetric ghosts. Brenner chooses the old trade. Stalk at snorkel depth, creep, then rise for the attack. He risks a burst of wireless to the pack. Rudel tactic is still the doctrine. And the radio sparks the night with a whisk of code. Aboard HMS Tay, K232, a river-class frigate bracketing convoy ONS-5. A petty officer bends over a new black box, a gimbaled loop of wire in a metal cabinet. The operator turns the knob and grins. "Huff-Duff bearings, sir. Fresh transmitter out there, green 25. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Arthur Vale nods, and a voice goes down the voice pipe. "Come right. Steer to cut the line. Report when Type 271 has him." The frigate's centimetric radar blooms a small and certain pip. Below the waves, U-553 listens, hears the convoy's iron heartbeat through the hull, and feels the old confidence rise with the boat. "Auf, Zerrohr Tiefe." The periscope breaks the surface in a glitter of ice needles. He sees a wall of black, merchantmen hunched under the moon's torn gauze, their mast lights masked, smoke mixing with the blown spume. Escorts pace like sheepdogs at the edges. He lines up on a fat freighter and whispers the geometry. Angle on the bow, speed, spread. Torpedo men ready forward. A ping walks across his nerves. Once, that sound marked amateur hour on the surface. Now it is an educated touch, short, sharp, from a set that can see in fog and night. The next touches are sharper. An American voice on VHF, flat, fast, a searchlight's ghost sweep, and then a starburst of white on the wavetops as depth charges roll off a low stern and step down the ladder into the deep. Alarm! Talkin'! The helmsman jerks the planes. U-553 knifes down. The first pattern explodes a cable length astern, hammering the boat's steel shell so hard that light bulbs pop like seeds and a pressure gauge spits its glass. Men lock their elbows to keep their ribs inside. Tools leap. Somewhere aft, a gasket screams and gives up its ghost with a spray of brine. The lights return as the battery breakers slam back into place with fists. Brenner steadies his voice. Ruder Hart Steuerbord. Tiefer. 200 Meter. The boat slides into blackness, creaking like a tree in winter. Above, on Tay, the Aztec operator sings the ranges into a language of hunting. Hedgehog crews stand over a spiked corolla of small bombs, fuses set to explode only if they hit steel. Shoot! A wreath of splashes walks in front of the ghost on the screen. The sea holds its breath. Then nothing. Hedgehog is a gambler's throw. Hedgehog does not waste a concussion on water. Brenner's engineer slaps his shoulder, wordless, still here. And yet the game is wrong. Every time the U-boat captain sniffs outside the convoy's skin, some new hand finds his nose. Ship-borne HF-DF, shortwave tattletales on his own transmissions. 10-centimeter radar that sees his tiny head in rain and night, aircraft where there shouldn't be aircraft at all. Video title: German U-boat captains couldn't believe America was escorting every convoy by 1943. Event detail: by mid-1943, Allied anti-submarine warfare matured at once. Ship-borne HF-DF, Huff-Duff, to home on U-boat radios, centimetric radar on escorts and patrol planes, escort carriers like USS Bogue putting TBM Avengers overhead, and purpose-built destroyer escorts laying tight depth charge screens. The air gap in mid-Atlantic closed under long-range B-24 Liberators. May 1943, later called Black May, saw U-boat losses spike and the Wolfpack doctrine falter. Batterien? Brenner asks. 50%, comes the measured lie. Sweat oils his lip. He leans toward the steel and feels the war change. In 1941, he hunted ships. Tonight, ships hunt him. And somewhere above this boiling dark, a carrier's aircraft are circling an ocean that should have belonged to the night. The next pattern walks closer. Men bite their teeth shut as dust drifts from cableways like snow, and a mug rolls with a sound like home in a world turned inside out. Ruder Meite, Fahrt 2 Knoten, he says. Geduld. Patience, now the only weapon the deep still guarantees. Outside, the convoy rolls on, lanterned by radar, guarded by aircraft, its heartbeat receding to the west. May 7, 1943. Mid-Atlantic, a day's steaming astern of ONS-5. On USS Bogue, CVE-9, the little carrier's deck feels like a handspan above the Atlantic. Spray ghosts across planks, a deck tractor coughs and tugs a squat TBM Avenger into the wind. Lieutenant Degi, Jack Harlan stands in the lee of the island, goggles perched on his forehead, watching ordnance men sway a depth charge into the bomb bay and lock it like a banker closing the safe. On a dolly nearby, a short, fat cylinder waits under a tarp, its label stenciled with nothing a cameraman would be allowed to film. Acoustic mine, an older chief says dryly, using the cover term the squadron prefers for a homing torpedo that listens for screws in the dark. A launch order, Mr. Harlan, the LSO calls. We've a sniff on HF-DF off the convoy's quarter. Shore says they're chattering. Go teach 'em manners. Topside, a TBM's right R-2600 barks alive, wringing gray steam from the ship's shadow. Harlan climbs the ladder, swings into the saddle. The radio man, star gunner, Perrin, checks the belly antenna and taps the black box that talks to sonobuoys as if it can hear him. We'll be back for supper, Harlan lies. The LSO's paddles dip. The ship heels a degree into the wind. Sky and water trade places once, then twice, and the Avenger is off into a horizon that looks like hammered pewter under a white sun. Back on Bogue's starboard catwalk, Commander Harold Buster Brown, Hunter-Killer Group flagship, leans on the rail with a mug of coffee gone cold. Below and ahead somewhere is the convoy. Behind and around are the escorts, Buckley and Cannon-class DEs that ride like bulldogs. On the radio net, a British accent, HMS Tay perhaps, pops and murmurs bearings. The thing that glues the voices together is new. The understanding that every convoy, even mid-ocean, even in weather that peels paint, is now part of a web that has air over it. ASV contact, Perrin says in Harlan's ears after an hour. ASV, airborne surface vessel radar, breathing out a pip where there should be only sea. Bearing 085, range 3. Harlan looks down at a sheet of ocean, so indifferent it could be marble. Nothing but the rake of wind and a single black punctuation. No. 2 on the waves. Then the periscope wink, a rod of dark glass cutting a circle into the Atlantic's face. Submerged, Perrin says. He's deep already. They lay a pattern for a ghost. First, a string of sonobuoys, tin cans with ears, plop and drift in a chain that listens into the water's muscle. The belly doors clank. Depth charges roll away, fat as beer kegs, and vanish with polite splashes that give no hint of the violence they intend. Harlan arcs around the datum, watching smoke markers step off distance. The ocean waits. Then a boil, not where you expect. Left. Left. Turn hard, Perrin says. Left buoy says cavitation. The homing fish goes last, a short, ugly drop and a clean line of foam as the Avenger climbs. It does not explode like a hero. It simply goes away to listen for the laboring screws of a boat that doesn't yet understand its enemy, no longer hunts only by eye and chance. Aboard USS Bogue, the CIC chalkboard turns into a map of a mind. HF-DF lines converging on an empty square. Airplane plot overlain with escorts' radar arcs. A convoy box trundling westward under a dome of patience. Brown looks at the watch officer. We keep them honest, he says. We don't win by a single ship. We win by the week. In U-5533's radio room, Brenner listens to a rumor of angels. A boom far away climbs the ribs of the hull. The engineer runs a palm along a hot pipe and grins without humor. See werfen alles. They're throwing everything. The old night, the ocean that forgave the pale wakes and the clumsy wireless notes, the slow-to-rise dawn, has a new sheriff with a flight deck. Escort HMS Tay finds another pip. The radar operator tunes out sea clutter with a surgeon's hand. Target bears red 17. The bridge answers with precision brought from schools that didn't exist 3 years ago. Come to launch Hedgehog. The pattern lands like knuckles cracked on a tabletop ahead of where a submarine will be, not where it is. Silence again. Somewhere, something metal ticked and then went very quiet forever. By noon, Harlan is low on fuel. He circles the datum one last time and looks down through a sunken lens, the way the Atlantic can look when men have been fighting there all morning. An oil smudge unfurls to the south. A plank, a box, a piece of someone's small history rides up and over a wave with no ceremony at all. He turns for Bogue. In his wake, sonobuoys bob and blink and wait like fishermen. On the carrier, the deck gang choreographs recovery with paddles and curses. The Avengers' wheels kiss the planks. The hook bounces, snatches steel, and sprawls the airplane to a halt. In the ready room later, a pot of coffee will go down like communion. And the younger pilots will say the same thing pilots everywhere say when they feel history flexing. It's different now. The convoy will write west in its watery ledger. And even those who don't know the words air cover will sleep better because they can feel the sky has a friend in it. And in the crush of the depth, a U-boat captain who used to hunt hears a ping like a metronome and understands that the song has changed time. June 8th, NavalHistory on year 943. Mid-Atlantic air gap, once a dead zone, now under a long shadow. The consolidated B-24 Liberator banks wide, 4 Pratt & Whitneys boxing the air into order. Flight Lieutenant James Merrick checks the new blister fairings under the wings where 10-centimeter radar looks for periscopes and wakes in the rain. ASV Mekader. Third. Happy, his radar operator says. He thumbs a row of switches and watches the phosphor whisper. If he's up at all, we'll see him. They've come a long way, from gap to grid. VLR, very long range. Liberators now launch from Newfoundland and Iceland, trade their bombs for fuel, and erase the blind spot Dönitz once counted as his own ocean. They stitch the gap to the convoys, speak to the escorts, and drop steel and sound into water on call. Merrick's observer taps the window. Wake, 2 points off. A thread disturbs the gray sea. It might be nothing. It could be the whole war. He calls a turn. The Liberator drifts down 200 feet, and the wake becomes a smear that resolves into a sinuous white line, crossing seas that look like hammered tin. At its head, a tiny, hateful shadow. The lip of a conning tower slices the swells. Target in sight, he says into the throat mic, and feels every mile from land flex across his back. The Leigh Light switch on the panel tempts his hand. But this is day, not night. They'll save the sun for the dark and use radar heavy as rain for now. The bomb bay yawns, and a pattern of depth charges dangles like a held breath. Below, in U-267, a Type 7 that could be any boat, Kapitän-Leutnant Vogt chooses risk. Batteries need charge, men need air. He's picked a time that used to be safe. The Metox aerial sits like a crucifix above the bridge. It hears nothing, and that is the problem. The air ticks. An odd sense certain captains get that is half superstition. And he is about to order alarm when the sky spits gray metal and the sea climbs a wall to meet him. The pattern walks in from ahead. The first charge slams short, too far to kill, close enough to frighten God. The second finds the boat's shoulder and quarrels with it like a giant with a fistful of iron. The Liberator roars low over the boil, wingtip nearly a kiss from the spume. The gunner rakes the conning tower with short, angry bursts that chew paint, but mostly courage. The boat slips under with a yard of water still streaming from its fairings. The sea closes with a clap like a book shut on a final line. Merrick doesn't circle for glory. He has a second convoy to sweep to by nightfall. He calls the datum, drops markers, and lays another pattern over where he thinks despair went. Back on the radio, a Canadian corvette answers with a burr of pride. We've got him on the phones. Bring the party. A destroyer escort changes course as if someone tugged its leash. The gap is not a gap anymore. It's a reach. In Lorient and Brest, the U-boat pens gnashed new teeth against their traps. Boats transit the Bay of Biscay under the claws of Wellingtons and mosquitoes. Leigh Lights flipping night to noon and throwing U-boats into the ugly choice between seeing and being seen. New detectors, Naxos, are hurried aboard to hear the Allied radars. New anti-aircraft rails clutter decks that once held torpedoes. The men who go to sea carry more guns and fewer illusions. On USS Bogue, Brown listens to a May that's going to be called black in somebody's history book. The board in the CIC blooms with colored chalk for contacts that used to be rumors. A message traffic strip rattles out. U-boat sunk, aircraft attack. Survivors few. No cheers. Just men who have spent 3 years being murdered by shadows, learning to breathe in the daytime. In a sea cabin aboard U-553, Brenner writes his KTB, War Diary, in a hand that doesn't quite shake until he reads it the next day. Feind hat jedes Geleit bewacht, he notes. The enemy has guarded every convoy. He describes escorts that seem to be everywhere. Aircraft that arrive faster than the weather changes. Depth charges that fall in educated patterns instead of angry guesses. His chief engineer draws a small, rude sketch of a carrier with a halo. The radio man laughs without humor and pencils a pair of wings on the halo. Night, which once belonged to the long, low prowler, now has a new habit. A white eye opening at a shout's distance, Leigh Light, followed by descending steel, and the sound a human body makes when it stops pretending to be brave. Captains start to ration what they used to spend freely, time on the surface, notes on the air, and the convoys go by, sawed in half by no wolf tonight, scaffolded with destroyer escorts that kick their sterns like mules at anything that pings, topped with Avengers whose bellies hold the patient machines that listen to water, draped with Liberators whose engines are hymnals. Somewhere, a boatswain's mate leans on a rail and thinks only of home. Somewhere else, a U-boat CO stares back through the night at a line of ships he can no longer make sense of and tries to remember how the ocean used to feel when it was his. October 31, 1943. North of the Azores. Fog trowels the sea smooth. USS Bogue, a Buckley-class destroyer escort with the smell of new paint still under the salt, rides a tired swell. Lieutenant Commander Brent Abel, XO for the mid-watch, leans into the bridge windscreen, wool cap tugged down, collar up, listening to the ship hum. Below, in the little ASW cave, the sonar man hums back to the beat of his own pings. Range opening, now reversing. Target zigging, sir. Abel doesn't smile. The ocean is a chessboard and the pawns learn to bite sometime this spring. Stand by, Hedgehog, he says. Slow to 8 knots. Keep the nose on. Buckley slides like a hunting dog scenting. The ahead thrower teams cradle their spiked bombs like odd flowers. Over the TBS radio, someone on Bogue's net cracks wise that they'll need a new blackboard soon. At the rate of May through October, the chalk is getting thin. It's blasphemy after years of funerals, and nobody says it twice. But the thought hangs. The tide is out on the Wolfpacks. Under the fog, U-553's diesels thrum as if they can drown the new century. Brenner has been at sea 3 weeks without a hit that wasn't answered by an airplane. His men speak softer. They move more carefully. He has forbidden the wireless except in the shortest stabs, and only when he can smell an escort for whom a bearing might be reversed. The boat is clean and taut, and the captain looks 10 years older than his identification card. A ping finds them on a bad angle. He orders a knifing dive, and the boat flips from one universe into another. Wind into weight, stars into plates, choice into geometry. Fast enough to make a man think about God. Charges step down the stair outside. The deck lifts under the captain's boots as if to throw him to the ceiling, then falls so slyly that his knees remember to bend before his brain does. Somewhere forward, a valve stutters and is soothed by a gentle hand. Somewhere aft, a young man prays in math and oil. Buckley's Hedgehog throws its ring of teeth. The bridge waits, sonar waits. The sea listens, then gives nothing back but its old, rude pulse. Miss. Abel notes the bearing. The CIC plots the target's last pride. We'll try him like a gentleman. Depth charges. The K-guns rack and cough. A tight pattern walks across the chart, and then across the water, and then across the iron. One charge goes off clean and close. One breaks something that will matter in 20 minutes. One serves only to scare and is not wasted doing that. Even success feels different now. Abel remembers 1942. The fear that ran down a mess deck like a rumor. The shame of bringing in merchantmen with gulls in their rigging where masts should be. He looks down at a deck where the paint is scuffed by boots that run toward the fight, not away. The ship can feel itself getting good at something it had to learn too late. Far to the east, in a low room with a map of the Atlantic pinned like a hunting trophy, Karl Dönitz draws a line around May and calls it what the boats have already called it: a black month. He writes a signal that tastes like ashes in the mouth: boats to withdraw, boats to shift, boats to hunt the edges and live if they can. Tactics that were math in 1941 are a gamble in 1943. He still has men brave enough to go. He does not have time to teach them what the enemy learned out loud, in daylight, with factories at their shoulders. At Piva and Torokina, in the Pacific, the story is different. But the rhymes echo. The same web of air and ship and radio, the same closure of gaps. It is a modern thing, this war by architecture and signal. In the gray water north of the Azores, it looks like a destroyer escort pouring knowledge down a bow wave and a U-boat captain learning that knowledge is deadlier than steel. Aboard U-5R-3, the chief brings Brenner a cup that shakes less when he holds it. "Brennstoff?" the captain asks. "Genug, wenn wir nicht kämpfen," the chief says. "Enough if we don't fight." He doesn't mean it cruelly. Men who have done this long enough can tell the truth without making it an insult. Brenner nods. He orders a course that is not toward the convoy, but along it, a parallel shadow. In his KTB that night, he will write about escorts that appear where there had been none, about an airplane that attacked without being heard, about a depth charge pattern that fell not where he was, but where he would be if he reacted like a human. The thing that breaks is not courage. It is doctrine. Wolfpacks need time on the surface to find, to signal, to swarm. HFDF eats that time. U-boats need the night to move. Centimetric radar steals the night. Boats need to breathe. Leigh Light makes lungs a liability. Crews need new tools. The factories are busy keeping men alive on the land, not inventing physics at sea. And the convoy, once a herd, has teeth now. Buckley and Bogue and 100 unglamorous call signs that mean navies learn to do the math. After midnight, Buckley's watch hears a contact fade to a smear, and then to a rumor, and then to the sea's old sigh. Abel lets his shoulders drop. Secure from general quarters. The bosun pipes the ship to a quieter heartbeat. Men hang cups in hooks and sleep where they are. In the morning, a junior officer will chalk today's nothing on the board and feel pride as sharp as victory. No ships lost. All westbound. In the warmth of his bunk, Brenner counts bolts. He hears the whisper of men who have run out of lies to tell themselves and have kept a little courage anyway. He falls asleep imagining the old war where the horizon lifted a freighter over the world's curve and a man could shape a torpedo spread with a grease pencil and pride, and wakes to a sonar's distant finger and understands he dreams about yesterday because tomorrow is an escort carrier's propeller heard through the bones. The Atlantic's winter is coming. The convoys will steam. The boats will go because men told to go will go. And some will still find a way to make numbers into blood. But the story is bent. It does not break back.